Hello everyone, I'm ashleighbanfield, bringing you deep into this investigation.
There is so much to share today regarding the Lynette Hooker case.
How do I even put this? I am feeling incredibly frustrated. Honestly, angry at Brian Hooker, yet hopeful all at once. Let me explain why.
I have just learned that despite 3 days of sonar, drones, and divers,
and Maggie, the highly trained Broward County cadaver dog,
investigators and the Coast Guard have failed to find any sign of Lynette Hooker.
In the Abaco region of the Bahamas, I am absolutely devastated by this news.
Because I truly thought those GPS coordinates showing where Brian was lurking on the night of April 4th.
And April 5th would lead searchers directly to her remains or crucial physical evidence,
such as her missing dry bag and the oar she had with her.
We strongly hoped they would find some physical trace of those items, but I can confirm they have not found her body. Now, the Coast Guard vessel and its crew are preparing to depart. They are reportedly leaving at 10:30 in the morning on Friday, June 5th. I am recording this update on Thursday night, June 4th, and my heart aches. I truly believed this search would bring her home. But it did not. That does not mean it is over, though. This specific search effort just fell short. It is a crushing blow for Darlene, her mother, and for Lynette's daughter, Carly, as well as her father, Dan. It is heartbreaking for her friends and everyone who cares so deeply about getting her justice. But I want to remind you of something important. I have covered numerous homicide cases that ended in convictions without a body. We have all heard that old, mistaken legal cliché, no body, no case. But prosecutors absolutely do not need a body. I have seen it successfully done firsthand, so please do not feel like it is over or that justice will never happen.
oh, justice is coming.
I still firmly believe Brian Hooker will face arrest and prosecution unless he decides to plead. Currently, he has not been charged with any crime. He remains legally innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. Yet, the walls are closing in on Brian, and here is why. Failing to locate her body does not mean investigators came up completely empty-handed. And if you are wondering how this could happen after all these weeks, especially since the abacos are shallow and clear, like a bathtub, where you can easily peer straight to the bottom, making it seem inevitable that any missing person or physical evidence would have been spotted by now. It has now been nearly 8 weeks since Lynette vanished. We are just 2 days away from that milestone, meaning decomposition has almost certainly run its course. On land, the process might lag, but not in warm Bahamian waters teeming with marine life. At this point, search teams were only hoping to find a skull or a jawbone separated from any scattered skeletal remains. Honestly, that was the absolute best they could hope for. But tracking down scattered skeletal fragments gets incredibly difficult over time, especially when wild animal activity is factored in. And that rule applies to land searches as well. That is most likely why Lynette's remains have not been recovered yet. But do not think it is because Brian Hooker told the truth. And that is exactly why I still have hope. This is not over, Brian Hooker. See, a major reason the Coast Guard was out there, deploying deep-sea divers, sonar gear, drones, and Maggie, was to retrace Brian Hooker's exact timeline. They wanted to find the physical evidence that should exist, but does not. Because proving a suspect is lying often comes down to proving that the expected forensic evidence is completely missing. And so, I cannot share the exact details of what Coast Guard investigators did or did not uncover. But I can tell you that sources close to the case confirmed that the items they failed to locate in the places they expected to find them is highly incriminating. Let me give you one direct quote that perfectly sums up the whole situation. Cover your ears if you are sensitive to harsh language, but here it is. He is done for. See what I mean? That gives me real hope. Sure, we have not found Lynette's body, but the actual evidence recovered, combined with the missing elements that should have been present.
Those are the exact reasons why Brian Hooker is completely done for.
Now, let me share another detail that keeps my hope alive. It has to do with what we observed earlier today. We saw the vessel, Brian and Lynette's 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy. It is actually a solid, rigid boat. It looks exactly like an inflatable boat, but it definitely is not. The Royal Bahamian Police Force held that craft in custody for 7.5 weeks.
Marine safety investigators from the Coast Guard had been desperate to analyze it for weeks.
We know that Maggie, the specialized human remains detection dog, finally got inside to perform a thorough forensic sweep. Unfortunately, the dog did not alert.
This detail is vital, and I am sure you are wondering where that boat was kept.
Because if it sat out in the rain for 7 weeks, that ruins evidence, and you are correct.
Thankfully, my sources confirmed that investigators kept the watercraft inside a covered, secure warehouse garage, protected from the elements.
Well,
Thank goodness for that, because it fully preserved the crucial forensic evidence on board.
Still, it is frustrating that Maggie did not hit on any scent there.
now, if Brian Hooker, and remember, he has not been charged with a crime, but if he killed his wife aboard their yacht, Soulmate, as I suspect, which seems like a much more logical scenario given his shifting stories.
Keep in mind,
He is currently not facing charges.
Now, if he loaded Lynette's body into that dinghy to dispose of her somewhere out at sea,
it makes you wonder exactly how long she was in there.
Because according to cadaver dog handlers and forensic experts,
Canines specifically trained for this job.
these dogs can detect scent on a surface just 3 hours after a person dies. That means the clock starts early. Within 3 hours, the decay leaves a trace.
But if Lynette was not kept in that dinghy for that 3-hour window, that might explain why the canine, Maggie, did not alert there. But seeing the video of the Coast Guard securing that very dinghy and towing it back to their cutter was a massive relief. So, we watched them transport the dinghy on an OTH boat. This was recorded right after our footage of it arriving at the Abaco Inn, secured to the bow of that rigid hull inflatable.
They dropped a few Coast Guard officers off at the dock
And immediately sped away, heading straight back to the cutter.
They made their way through Tillu Cut.
Heading out to the eastern side of Elbow Cay, where the cutter was stationed.
This is a massive step forward. Truly great news.
Securing that dinghy is a breakthrough.
I am not allowed to share everything found on board, but I can share this.
This investigation trip was not wasted.
Like I said before, their search efforts helped them establish exactly what was missing from the vessel.
That is huge.
And they finally recovered the dinghy, something investigators have been tracking down for months. No word on what was inside, or what vital forensic clues the boat might yield. But while the NT300 outboard motor was still attached to the stern, the torpedo engine was completely gone.
So where is that torpedo motor? That was the primary engine mounted on this dinghy just a couple of years back.
Most experienced live-aboard cruisers,
The kind of sailors who call their vessel home, will tell you that you never throw away a backup engine. You keep it.
a backup motor is your literal lifeline, because that small boat is your only connection to land.
And we already know that torpedo motor was not found on board Soulmate.
So where did it go? Could it have been used as an anchor to weigh something down underwater?
We do not know yet.
But there is still real reason for hope, because
The Bahamian authorities have handed over.
highly valuable evidence to Coast Guard investigators.
That is incredibly encouraging news to hear. It could be the breakthrough this cold case needs.
There is still an immense amount of police work required to build a solid prosecution.
But local police transferring this crucial evidence beyond just the recovered dinghy is incredibly significant. We can physically see the small boat, but it is the hidden evidence, the pieces I cannot see, that my trusted insider sources assure me the Bahamian detectives have successfully turned over to the Coast Guard.
Investigators to bring directly back aboard the cutter. Tag and bag the evidence. Lock it down in impound and prepare for trial.
I already told you about one of the crucial details we uncovered.
Exclusively right here, long before the mainstream media caught wind, began reporting it as fact, is that this is officially a homicide case.
The suspected murder of Lynette Hooker. That is huge. It means detectives are dotting every I and crossing every T here.
Because when you build a murder case, the physical evidence is absolutely everything.
Like they say, no body, no crime.
But there is plenty of other proof. My inside sources, multiple credible contacts in fact, tell me that this search was actually a massive success, not a waste at all.
Not in the slightest.
Well worth the journey was the exact phrase they used.
Another insider called it a home run.
So there it is. Believe me, I share your deep disappointment.
I desperately wanted this for Dan, Lynette's father, her mother, and her daughter Darlene. And for Carly, too. I wanted so badly for them to bring Lynette home. I just wanted her to finally come home.
And I know you did too. This was an innocent woman. Her colleagues at AT&T described her as a total bright light, with a genuinely sweet personality, someone everyone loved having around, hands down their favorite coworker.
In fact, one of her coworkers told me something that nearly brought me to tears.
He said she seemed so lonely, married to that man, Brian Hooker. It breaks your heart because she was incredibly close with her friends at AT&T. They adored her.
Not everyone has colleagues who care that much, but these people truly loved her. They absolutely loathed him, though.
He was a total jerk.
They described him as a manipulative, conniving nightmare, a guy who lived to pull strings and play mind games.
Always trying to scheme and stick it to the man. He actually served as a union shop steward, and he weaponized that position just to mess with management and spite the company,
even when his own coworkers didn't want him to pick a fight. And we all know just how toxic this guy really is. He was fired from AT&T for deliberately hiding his location, spoofing the GPS on his work van.
So, he considered himself a master of staying off the grid, hiding his tracks so nobody knew his moves. That is who we are dealing with.
But here is what I love: the slip-ups, the details he completely overlooked. That is how police catch criminals, and there are plenty of those mistakes here.
Over the last 3 days, my Bahamas sources have kept me highly optimistic with updates on what they are uncovering.
Even when considering what they did not find.
There is what they found, and then what should have been there but was missing.
They are basically proving a negative, and I absolutely love that angle.
Now, let me go out on a limb here. We cannot assume this is their final sweep of the area.
The Coast Guard might not be done yet. They could easily return. They have follow-ups, and they might go back. They do not need the massive cutter. They can easily fly in, just like last time, right?
It is absolutely doable.
And if they do decide to return, if fresh leads come in, or if Bahamian police or an informant uncovers something new. Here is a very strange protocol detail.
American investigators cannot simply take Lynette's remains right away and bring her straight back home to the United States.
The red tape is incredibly messy, slow, and frustrating. If you have ever lost a relative abroad, you know. My sister-in-law's mother passed away overseas,
and simply trying to handle the paperwork was a nightmare.
Getting her body back to Canada from Britain, even within the Commonwealth, was brutal.
It was incredibly tedious and slow. There is a strict process for handling human remains, especially during an active homicide investigation.
In her case, it was a natural death, but the logistics were still incredibly painful.
So, I know for certain that if the police had actually found Lynette, they would not have announced it.
They definitely would not have told me.
They might have informed her family, like Darlene, Carly, or Dan, but they certainly would not tell the media. There is no way they would let us find out unless we completely stumbled into the truth ourselves.
And that comes down to the delicate
legalities and political pressure.
That is simply how these cases work. If investigators do eventually find her body, expect this exact legal battle to surface again in the future.
And honestly, I hope it does. That is the exact kind of trouble you want to face.
You want those complications because it means they finally located Lynette.
Let me share a few other developments from today. Remember, I am recording this entry on Thursday, June 4th.
The dive teams made a massive effort to search 2 specific spots that caught my attention. They deployed sonar and sent divers directly into the area where Soulmate was anchored.
Do not forget, a crucial witness swore she heard a massive splash out there around 9:30 that night.
Not some minor sound,
But an unmistakable heavy splash right next to Soulmate.
Others with her also reported flares. Several people in that group witnessed distress flares shooting up.
And accounts differ. Some saw them arching high, while others say they skimmed across the water.
That discrepancy could be due to their perspective or just fading memory.
but multiple witnesses confirmed seeing flares launched directly from Soulmate, not far north near Luber's Cay, where Brian claims he finally threw his anchor down. Shot off his flares and got ignored, but right on Soulmate itself.
That is why recovery divers were thoroughly searching the vessel's original anchoring zone.
Fortunately, investigators know that exact location because Hopetown Fire and Rescue met the boat there the next morning. They had the precise coordinates of the anchorage, the absolute exact spot. Maybe not perfectly, though marine tracking data does pinpoint the vessel's general position. So, between the eyewitness statements and the transponder data, investigators have a very solid idea of where she sat.
That is key, and they are diving there because they must know what caused that splash.
What exactly did they dump overboard? What got tossed during a physical struggle? Honestly, we just don't know.
Plus, having an actual eyewitness back that up is absolutely crucial.
But that wasn't the only spot they searched.
Witnesses also saw them hunting north of Brian Hooker's vessel.
If you have been following this investigation, you know I love this twist. It centers on this gorgeous waterfront home sitting right on the western shore of Elbow Cay, a massive white estate overlooking Aunt Pat's Bay.
Investigators targeted that exact area where the husband claimed everything went down.
Where things logically should have washed up or left some kind of trace.
They spent all day retracing his timeline, focusing heavily on that specific coordinate.
Remember when I pointed out those dense mangroves on the map?
I think it was back in week 2, when the Coast Guard said they were focused on those mangroves. That is right behind where Brian claimed this wild story happened. Let's be real. A tangled mangrove forest is an incredibly easy place to conceal a body. It offers perfect deniability. She just drifted in there, decomposed, and he gets to say it wasn't his fault. Bye. But that lie fails if your GPS shows you creeping around those waters at night while claiming you were drifting without any power. Because apparently your wife fell overboard with the boat keys, leaving you with only one oar. And suddenly, a highly trained Marine somehow cannot paddle back with a single oar. I could have rowed it. I am only 5'6", and I could manage with one paddle. Or, honestly, do you know what I would have done? Instead of fabricating that story, I would have just hopped out of the dinghy. The water in that area was probably only 3 feet deep. That is the kind of logic we are dealing with here. Instead, he plays completely helpless, supposedly drifting all the way out toward Marsh Harbor. And then, after drifting a full mile out, he finally decides to drop anchor and fire off emergency flares. The entire alibi is total garbage, especially since it does not even get dark until 8 o'clock at night. Yet he claims he lost sight of her because the waves were massive and it was pitch black. No way. You left the Abaco Inn at 7:30 under a bright sun.
I have stood in that exact spot and timed it myself.
It was still light at 7:55.
By 8 p.m., the sun finally slips below the horizon, and twilight fades into total darkness very quickly.
But at 7:55, visibility is still decent, and at 7:45, it is completely bright. So his entire sequence of events is a total fabrication.
Just a quick reminder, I am recording from my northern studio, nestled in my northern location up in Canada. So you might hear the frogs getting louder in the background. Around 8:30, their nighttime chorus really starts to pick up. It is mating season right now. They get so loud we actually have to shut our windows.
We are only 100 feet from the wetlands, and they are absolutely going wild.
And the rain is starting to fall.
So you will probably hear those drops hitting the roof soon. I apologize for that, but nature is unpredictable.
We already know his story was total garbage.
We know he never actually made that disastrous trip, let alone floated all the way to Marsh Harbor.
None of it happened. Now investigators are working to prove exactly that. They are making absolutely certain that they can. Show a jury everything I have seen firsthand. After all, you cannot just take 12 jurors out on a boat to prove how impossible this is. Unbelievable story. Documenting and retracing his steps on video serves a crucial purpose.
They are proving that his version of events simply could not have happened there.
Where is his dry bag and oar? Where is all the gear he supposedly lost? Out in the Bahamas and the Abacos, debris like that always washes ashore. If you have watched Nathan's footage, you will see lost gear from boats, like hats, mugs, and glassware, littering the area. That kind of debris always drifts right onto the beach, or sits clearly visible on the seabed, just like the bottom of a swimming pool. So exposing his lies is just as vital as finding Lynette and recovering the rest of the physical evidence. Think all those organic products you buy come from small, family-owned businesses? Think again. Huge corporations and private equity groups have quietly acquired most of them, taking over the brands and filling them with cheap, artificial ingredients.
But one brand does things differently, the Van Man Company. They launched the grass-fed tallow skincare trend years ago with their moisturizers,
and have been dominating the market ever since with pure, wholesome formulas.
Tallow is effective because its fatty acids closely match our natural skin oils, allowing our bodies to absorb it easily.
It easily replaces your daily lotion, your night cream,
anti-aging formulas, and even basic first aid bombs.
It is potent enough to restore damaged skin, yet so safe you could literally eat it. Just real ingredients, ready to escape those corporate chemicals?
Head over to vanman.shop/Banfield and use code Banfield for 15% off.
That is vanman.shop/Banfield.
Use coupon code Banfield to save 15% today, or simply click the direct link down in the description below.
Vanman. Honest ingredients, zero exceptions. Now, you might be wondering if divers recovered other physical evidence down there, even if they did not find Lynette.
Perhaps some other clues from the depths.
Unfortunately, my sources confirm that the underwater search turned up absolutely nothing.
However, the evidence that the Bahamian police handed over
to American federal investigators are incredibly detailed.
There is solid evidence. And it is deeply discouraging that the physical search did not yield the breakthrough we desperately wanted.
But this is not over. Homicide has no expiration date, and this is a murder investigation.
Justice never expires. That will not stop them from looking, and it does not mean that local beachgoers or passers-by paddling along the shore might not stumble onto key evidence. In fact, they probably will.
The beautiful, secluded beaches all around the Abacos are always packed with tourists and local explorers.
Because of this investigation, many locals are out searching.
Our contacts are scanning the area constantly. Marnie is out there right now.
Nathan is searching too, and they plan to keep going tomorrow, even after the Coast Guard cutter departs.
They believe there are still unexplored spots where.
I mean, perhaps the scuba gear and dry bag drifted off to some place that never showed up on GPS.
Either way, hope is not entirely gone.
And that matters. Seeing Maggie step onto the shore today reminded me of how hard that cadaver dog has worked.
If you are new to this story,
Maggie and her handler, Chris, were brought in from the Broward County Sheriff's Department to assist the Coast Guard.
They really are an incredibly dedicated team.
Lindsay and I actually met Chris and Maggie in the Bahamas around 7 weeks ago during our initial trip.
She did not alert on land either.
It is incredibly frustrating. She did not find any scent in the water, showed zero reaction on the dinghy, and stayed completely silent during the land searches.
But I want to emphasize this. Just because she did not hit on a scent does not mean the search is over. I have reported on investigations where dogs found human remains hidden for decades.
That kind of evidence does not just vanish.
they can search the area again or bring in other dogs. This is far from over.
So I remain hopeful that new leads will point us in the right direction.
And speaking of those crucial leads, please,
If you saw anything unusual on April 4th, the night before Easter, share your tips with us.
Just email dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. And if you prefer to remain private, I completely get it. Instead, you can download the Coast Guard Investigative Services app to submit an anonymous tip.
Search for the CGIS Anonymous Tips. Just get the app, send the tip, and help us move this forward.
many of you already have, and we truly appreciate it.
I wish you would send them to me too. They cannot share with me, even though I pass along everything I get.
But the law prohibits them from sharing active case evidence. That makes sense. This is a criminal prosecution, after all.
They are building a case to prosecute him. The suspect, Brian Hooker, is not charged yet.
But the clock is ticking. Let us cover a few more details. Regarding yesterday's meeting at the Abaco Inn, I managed to uncover some new details.
It was a major gathering of all the lead investigators.
We were all wondering what it was about, and now I can share what went down.
It appears the summit was initiated by Bahamian officials, and we know that several key figures attended. Specifically, highly placed officers from the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the Royal Bahamas Defense Force attended the meeting.
They summoned this secret session right in the middle of the day with the Coast Guard team. And immediately afterward, the Bahamian authorities made a move.
My sources reveal that the Coast Guard was suddenly banned from using local guides or private watercraft to get around.
Mean.
No local captains, no hired boats, nothing. They could only travel using official Bahamian government vessels.
It is incredibly frustrating, honestly. Why reject backup? You need all the help you can get.
When search teams have to reach 100 separate locations, and they must move fast.
Remember how the local authorities treated our search crews during the first round?
They literally left them stranded on the dock for hours.
So it is maddening to hear about this new order banning any local vessels and experienced captains.
Especially since we know those local boat captains were already out there saving lives.
And then the local police.
The island administration suddenly issued that ban. Immediately after that closed-door meeting, those private vessels were dismissed. It is irritating, but no complaints have surfaced yet.
And I do not expect any.
Regarding how search crews were treated this round, or if they reached every target. This time, they brought their own specialized high-speed rescue boat. Specifically, a high-speed rigid inflatable boat.
These vessels are built for extreme speed. Unlike the massive, slow-moving cutters, they had their own deployable craft.
You have probably spotted that bright orange craft in the photos.
Alongside it was that massive, high-tech tactical boat deployed directly by the local island authorities, a truly impressive vessel.
Word is that critical meeting happened yesterday, and the administration is tightening its grip. Our sources confirm that yesterday's active search was temporarily halted due to severe lightning. The conditions were brutal. We showed you footage of the heavy downpours just yesterday.
which created extremely dangerous conditions for the recovery divers.
Normally, crystal clear waters make underwater search operations much easier.
But intense rain and thick overcast skies make tracking anything near the bottom incredibly difficult.
And when lightning strikes, everything stops. Response boats stay docked, and recovery divers cannot submerge.
That electrical storm forced teams to suspend their critical recovery efforts for hours.
Then, right in the middle of the afternoon, an unexpected emergency caught everyone completely off guard.
The local volunteer rescue team had to suddenly
Rush over to the marina because a luxury catamaran had suddenly burst into flames.
A massive fire was consuming the entire vessel,
requiring an immediate high-stakes response.
They graciously shared exclusive footage with us, giving you a raw look at what these brave teams encounter in a crisis.
Even while assisting in the active search for the missing woman. Alongside the Federal Coast Guard and local defense forces, these tireless volunteers jumped right back into life-saving action.
I have a big request.
Please consider donating generously to support this crucial volunteer rescue department.
They are easy to find online. Look up their rescue foundation, because this is the work they do daily.
They pull double duty.
Every single member is a volunteer, and their support for federal search teams is absolutely invaluable.
Please support their mission if you can. It makes a real difference. That sums up today's developments.
Uncovering these updates is no easy task.
So I am incredibly relieved that we secured a clear picture of exactly what is happening in this ongoing search. But I must leave you with one final, sobering thought.
Obviously, I must report that Lynette's remains were never recovered.
But I need to choose my words carefully here, because every detail matters.
When I tell you detectives believed this trip was entirely worth the effort,
I can assure you that whatever crucial evidence they managed to secure beyond just that dinghy,
which had been a primary focus for months,
finding that boat, and they finally did. But beyond seizing that vessel, they uncovered other pieces of evidence that were
potentially devastating for Brian Hooker.
I appreciate you listening and watching. Make sure to subscribe for more updates. It genuinely helps support our ongoing investigative work.
It is simple, free, and keeps you closely connected. Honestly, it makes a massive difference.
But I will keep tracking this case, delivering the latest updates as they unfold.
I also have a special deep dive episode launching very soon,
featuring a renowned body language expert
who analyzes every word and gesture from Brian Hooker, revealing what lay beneath the surface.
You definitely do not want to miss it.
Thank you for watching and listening. Remember, the truth is not just serious, it is drop dead.